Jim in California, and you just want to discuss the existence of God. And you're on with Tracie and Mandisa. Jim?
All right. Hi.
Hey.
All right. So I wanted to talk about the existence of God. And the argument I want that I think is probably the best case for theism is personally the Kalam cosmological argument.
We just got a collective, sort of gah from the audience. And I think the reason is that that's been addressed like lots and lots. Do you have something new to add about it, like something that hasn't been rehashed like a million times, or is this just going to be the same conversation that's been had like a million times?
Well, I mean, it could be the same conversation. Or
do you have something new that we haven't heard that's like, hey, I've listened to the show and you've addressed this, but I think you're not understanding a certain aspect of it that I'd like to address? Or is this just going to be, let's talk about Kalam again?
What does that have to do with let's talk about Kalam again?
Okay, why do you want to have this conversation again?
Well, because I've never heard you guys talk about the Kalam before. But then again, I don't watch you guys usually. All
right, well, let's just talk we'll give it a few minutes and just see how it goes. So go ahead.
Okay. Well, the Kalam uses mainly two premises in support of its conclusion.
Yeah, everything is it everything that begins to exist, has a cause, right?
For existence. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, everything that begins to exist has a cause, and then the cause is special pleaded to not have to need a cause. Is that right?
Well, no, because the cause. The second premise of the Kalam argues for a metric beginning, a beginning for time. So whatever caused time would be prior to time itself, making it immutable.
Why is it immutable?
And atemporal.
Why is it immutable? How do you know anything about the time before time?
Well, I never said time before time.
Well, you said that there was a time when time began. Wait, there's a time when time began, right?
No, I said prior to time.
Right, so how is there a prior to time if there's not a time when time began?
Well, the prior I'm talking about here is like the greater than and less than relationship you find in mathematics. It's not a tensed fact. Like when I say, for example...
Right, but I mean, what we're basically saying is that there was a point at which our universe began, and that's when we sort of start cataloging time, right? Right?
Well, the Kalam, no.
No?
The Kalam offers that an infinite amount of temporal regress is impossible.
We don't know. I don't know. I know nothing about before this universe, right? Like, all I know is that we don't have any way to gauge what occurred or how to assign metrics, or we don't know anything about how to judge what the case was before this universe began. Right? That's what Hawking says in his Beginning of Time lecture, is that we might as well write those things out of the story because we don't have any information about them, and right now there's no way to get information about them, so we can't say anything informed about what was going on before our universe and before time began, so we might as well start from there. Right?
Well, but we can argue for certain properties at least.
I don't think we can. I mean, you can argue for them, but you can't test for them, and so you're just simply asserting things, and we have no way to confirm them. Right?
Well, I would disagree there.
Okay, how do we confirm anything you're going to say?
Through logic.
That's not a confirmation. That's a hypothesis, right? So if you start using logic, it's going to probably be based on realities that we're confronted with in this universe. Right? I mean, how would it not be? What else are you going to base it on? Realities that exist somewhere else that we can't have access to?
Well, a priori intuition. I mean, mathematics is something.
I don't.
It sounds more.
I mean,
like
I would think that Hawking understands mathematics, and he's basically said that we can't really gauge those events. Now, there may be somebody in physics working on some aspect of how to gauge those events. I'm not qualified to talk about that, but I just know, like I said, Hawking says you can't really discuss them with any sort of informed way, and I have a feeling he understood math.
Well, he might have understood math, but he may not have understood the ontology of mathematics. That's something more philosophers are.
Right, but this isn't a
worried
philosophy
about.
question, it's a science question. Right? What
No, it is a
existed
metaphysical
before
question.
this universe is a question for cosmologists. Isn't it? Have you talked to any cosmologists about this? Have you talked to any physicists like astrophysics, or you written to a university department of astrophysics to see if anybody there is willing to answer questions for you on this? What have they said? Have you talked to anybody with a degree in this that could answer these questions in an informed way? Or did you just call an atheist show?
Besides these ad hom attacks.
I'm not. It's not. When did I attack you? When did I attack you? What did I say that was like an attack or an insult on you? I asked questions and I wasn't jacking off. I was literally saying, like, for example, there's been times I've needed to know things where I had questions about things I was reading or things I didn't understand, and I would reach out to like somebody who was head of a department in a university who dealt with that. One of them was like, I was reading the Icelandic sagas and I had some questions about why they had certain laws. And I didn't just call some weird show. I literally went to somebody who had a degree, who was heading up a department. I said, are you willing to give me a few minutes of your time to talk to me about my questions about this? Because I don't understand it. And they were willing to do it. If they hadn't been, I'd have gone to somebody else. But I'm going to go to somebody who's able to do it. It's like somebody who has questions about evolution calling the show instead of talking to a biologist. Now, if you've talked to a biologist and you want to talk to me about what they told you or whatever, we can have that conversation, but I can't really cross-check biologists. But it's the same with this. I mean, if this is about cosmology and I'm asking you, have you ever spoken to somebody who actually has a degree in this field that could answer these questions before you called the show? I think that's a fair question.
Right, but the thing is, my arguments in support of an actual infinite or against an actual infinity is more based on metaphysical arguments.
Right, but you need to talk to the people that deal with the actual hard facts about this, because they're the ones that can tell you whether your metaphysical arguments are holding water in reality. They're the ones that study this. Why would you not go and see what the science behind this actually has to say before you would call an atheist show? Why wouldn't you look up the scientific rebuttals to this thing before you would call us to talk about it? Why don't you want to know what actual experts in this field know? This is a science question. It's not a philosophical question. It's a science question. You can philosophize about it all day long, but if you're saying things and they're wrong, I have no way to check them against a reality because I don't know how to look at the reality of before time. How would I check anything you're saying? How can I go and validate it? How could I verify? What would I hold it up against to look at and say, yes, this is what happened before time? How do I know? How do we know? Even if it feels intuitively good to us, how do we know it's accurate? And even if it matches things that make sense in this universe to us and seems reasonable based on this universe, whatever happened before time began isn't going to conform to the rules and regulations and the requirements of this universe. So we're talking really out of our depth here, I think.
But none of that is against the inference that something that is prior to time is atemporal.
I don't know what would be prior to time. I don't know if there was time prior to time. I don't know what there would be. And if somebody tells me it's a certain way, I don't know. No, I'm not saying that you did. I'm saying I don't know how I would check it. You can say it and we can talk about it, but we're not really going to be able to get anywhere. We're talking about things that are not falsifiable and that would be like intuitively accepted based on knowledge of a universe that has no real relevance to the question. I mean, is this even making sense? Like, do you understand what I'm saying as far as my objection to... I feel bad because it's like, it sounds like I'm saying I don't even want to talk about it, but what I'm trying to do is make you understand that we could talk all day about it and we'll never be able to resolve anything because there's no way to verify anything you're going to say because we don't have access to the information to check it.
Right, but I mean, the objection that you're giving, like time prior to time, doesn't even make coherent sense.
I'm just simply saying that but before time doesn't need to make coherent sense is, I guess, part of my point. Because it doesn't make coherent sense based on our knowledge of this universe doesn't mean that it can't make sense in whatever would be before time. What I'm saying is that we can't use this universe to make assumptions about that because what happens in this universe can't be trusted to be how it would work. It would have been so vastly different that there's no way to confirm, looking at what makes sense in this universe, that our assumptions about something that would be before this universe would make sense.
So, from what I can understand from your objection is that any talk we can make prior to the universe may not make unintelligible sense, and therefore it's useless to posit it.
I'm saying you can posit it if you want, but at the end of the day, it's gonna be back to the beginning. You're not going to have learned anything. You're just going to have thought things through based on what you think makes sense. And then at the end of it, if people agree with you, you both think it makes sense and you could both be totally wrong and there's no way to verify it. The question would be whether or not you could get a hold of somebody in the field of physics who is investigating some way of accessing information about whatever was before this universe. That's what you're looking for. And that would be a super high-end physics. I mean, that wouldn't be just like your run-of-the-mill, let's get a plastic bottle full of water and put some floaters in it and do some, weekend tests with the kids. These are people that are really going to be on the edge of it. And I would recommend, I guess, if this is a field that interests you or if this is something that you're really interested in, that's what I would look for. I have heard that some people are looking into that type of physics, but I'm not a physicist and I don't know that much about it. And I can ask people at the blog if you know of any people that are working on this or physicists who are involved in this, departments at universities that might be involved in it. And don't think I'm being facetious. I have had professors and researchers get back to me on stuff and answer my questions. And I'll be honest with you. There have been a few times people have written back and just told me to go blow myself and that, they have no time for me. So you can get a crappy response from an asshole. But you can also get people who are just like, oh, sure, I love this stuff. I'd be happy to talk to you about it. And I would really recommend getting a hold of a person who has devoted their life to this type of research, and especially somebody that's very interested in whatever would be the cutting edge on how do we try to determine what would happen in, before time, which, if there's people looking into that, that would be the people you probably would want to talk to if you really want to know what is it that we can know about that.
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, anything prior to time or anything talking about outside of time doesn't have to make logically coherent sense, but somehow science, as if scientific theories don't need to make coherent sense, will somehow give the explanation.
No, I'm saying that there are people who are, I have heard that there are people who are trying to look into ways to be able to understand what may have happened before time. I don't know anything really about it. I'm just saying I've heard that because there's been times when I've put forward that we don't know anything about it, and other people have said, well, there's these people working on this thing here, and they say that you can look into certain aspects of it. And I don't really know what their scientific theories or their natural philosophy explanations would be for how you can do that. It might be that other scientists are like, hey, I think it's a crock of crap, and I don't agree with what they're doing over here in this research. I don't know. And consensus would be really important, right? So if you did find people that were studying that, and then a huge swath of the rest of the people in the field were just like, yeah, that's a bunch of crap, I wouldn't necessarily lean too hard on it. You might be interested in looking at it because it sounds like something that interests you personally, but at the same time, you'd want to be careful because just because something is high-end and, very scientific doesn't necessarily mean that other people that are, working in that field agree with how that methodology is being executed. Does that make sense? Or not?
I mean, here's the thing. From what I understood is that you dismiss my claim that the cause of these years can be atemporal based on the sense that...
I'm not dismissing. I'm saying we don't know. I don't know how to check it. If you make a claim about whatever existed or didn't, whatever was before time, I don't know how to confirm it. And so I don't know what to do with that information.
Well, there is one way you could do it. If you could prove, for example, the universe had always existed, then there would be no need to posit for atemporal.
Okay, but as far as I know, the prevailing theories are that there was a beginning to what we consider to be our universe. The only question is what happened before, and as far as I know, that has not been answered. There may be people looking into it, I'm not sure, but if this is an area that interests you, those would be the people that could give you the best information about it. That's where I would suggest you start your research, not in a philosophy book.
Right, especially if you're coming onto this show and perhaps providing some sort of counter for, I guess, or maybe, are you asking this question because you truly do believe in the existence of a God? I'm trying to understand exactly why you called asking about this.
Is this what convinced you that there's a God? Did you not believe in God and then you heard Kalam and then you started believing?
Well, yes, actually.
Okay.
And there we go.
And did you check that against people who actually are expert in the field to see if they agreed that it was a reasonable conclusion?
Right, but what I don't see is why are you guys so dismissive on philosophy?
No, I'm dismissive. What I'm trying to do, and I'm doing a bad job of it, is to avoid a conversation that results in nothing fruitful. So what you're basically trying to say is let's have a conversation about this thing that at the end of the day, no matter where it goes, and even if I agree with everything you're saying, we have no way to confirm it. And we're still we don't know. This makes a lot of sense to us, but we don't know if it's true. We don't know what to compare it against.
Right,
what would we compare it against?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, the people that would have to confirm it are the people I'm saying that you might want to go and talk to. What good is it to have a lot of information that you can't falsify? don't get me wrong, there are some people who have fun simply sitting around and talking about stuff and they don't care. For example, these, I forget what they're called, but they're like these thought experiments, I guess, where people are just talking about what if this and what if that and sometimes there's real world implications and sometimes not so much. And they just enjoy, hypotheticals. But at the end of the day, if we're just going to go down Kalam and then at the end of it, it's even if I agree with you and said, oh yeah, that's a really interesting hypothesis that, results in a God, at the end of it, how do we confirm that? And then we're back to square one. I don't know. It intuitively, seems right, but I don't know what to do with that information because I can't confirm it. And what I'm saying is it seems to make sense to me that if somebody's it's just like if somebody heard creationist arguments, for example, and they were just like, wow, these are really compelling, and they call the show. And my thought would be, did you call biologists first? Did you talk to somebody with a PhD in genetics? But did you even reach out or try to get a hold of somebody that could answer those questions before you called the show? Because that's who if you really have an interest and you really find it compelling, I would think you would check with people that have devoted their lives to studying it and see if they think that makes sense. Why wouldn't you, I guess, is my question. Why wouldn't you do that?
Well, first of all, I don't think that analogy is comparable. Because, first of all, if we look at, why creationists believe what they do, they operate on the basis that the universe is causally open and then there's an outside force acting on the world.
Not necessarily. You could be a deist creationist, couldn't you? Isn't that what deists are? God started it, and now he's not involved? He's not acting on it? Or it's not acting? I guess.
But that's not an objection at all.
I'm not saying it's an objection to anything. I'm just saying that if somebody was a creationist or if they believed in, for example, young earth creationism, I would think that before calling the show, they should at least look into the scientific counter-arguments against what it is they're putting forward.
Well, I don't think they make it on the basis of natural law. Natural law operates that the universe is a causally closed
but the laws
no
within this universe would not be applicable to anything outside the universe. We wouldn't know if they would apply previously or not. There is no way to
Right,
know
but
that.
My objection is referring to when you mentioned the biological arguments, right, which is in the universe. So that objection wouldn't work.
No, I'm not. The only objection I'm making, if you want to call it that, is that if you have an interest in a particular topic that has entire fields of research behind it, what would be your objection to actually reaching out to those researchers to ask their views on it? I just don't understand why that's even a problem for me to ask that, or why that wouldn't have been something you'd do if this is really something that interests you.
Well, the thing is, I don't have any problems with that.
Okay, have you done it?
I had any problem with it?
Have you done it? I mean, isn't it a logical step? Like if somebody really, really has a big interest in horses and their entire worldview revolves around horses, and I say to them, have you ever gone to talk to somebody who, understands horses? And they're just like, no. I thought I'd call an atheist show about it. It's like, if your whole worldview hinges on this aspect of reality, and there are people who have literally devoted their lives to it for decades, and you haven't even spoken to them, I think that's a fair question for me to be kind of head scratching about why not?
Well, because on the basis of metaphysics.
So what? So tell them, hey, on the basis of metaphysics, I think the time before, or not the time before, but whatever was before time, necessitates a God. What do you think? Hawking says no, it doesn't. But there might be other physicists, who have published papers saying that it does. I've not seen them. But these people would be able to tell you if there is any scientific validity, any aspect of measurable reality that aligns with your conclusions or even your assumptions that lead to those conclusions. Like when you're telling them, wouldn't it be temporal? Well, they can answer you on that. They can say whether we can say that or not. I can't even say that.
And then you can call the show to say what the research that you found as to what they said, and whether or not it either confirms or contradicts with what anyone on the show would say. But you haven't even done that.
I don't even know that the show would have opinions on it. I mean, it might even be better to post at the blog because there'd be a lot more people that would have backgrounds in this than people on the show here that really aren't that into physics. I mean, but I do think that if this is an area that interests you and you've got questions about or you have opinions about whatever was before time, the people to talk to would be the people that are saying, here's when time started and here's what we can or can't say about that. Like that would seem to me the first people that I would reach out to if I was starting to have ideas on this and I was interested in it. I don't know what else to add. I mean, if you want to post at the blog about it, you can post at the blog about it, but I would really encourage you to talk to people who spend their lives looking at whatever they would consider evidence for this area of study and see what they're saying if this is something that impacts you a lot and that you feel is, that interesting. I mean, can you do that?
Yeah.
Would you be willing to do it?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I would encourage you to do it. It's not, please don't feel bad. I don't mind the call. And honestly feel like this was a productive discussion, despite the fact that we didn't get into the apologetics. I don't mind the call at all. And I'm sorry that there's I understand your disappointment. But I really think you would do better to talk to people who also are interested in this and who also have researched it and who can kind of help you to cross-check your views on it and either confirm or not. And I'm not sending you there saying they're going to tell you you're full of crap because I don't know. I've never put it forward to, physicists. Hey, what do you think of Kalam? So, I mean, I think it would be interesting for you to reach out to them and just say, look, I'm a believer and I hear this argument and, what are your thoughts or what is known or can you point me to some research? And if somebody writes you back and they're rude about it, then that's just somebody that couldn't be bothered. But don't give up. Go to someone else. I can almost guarantee you that you will, pretty quickly find somebody who's willing to say, hey, here's some information that you might find useful.